All right, we are live. Hello, we're live. I always have to wait a few seconds for the Instagram to catch up. So here it is, it's catching up. As always, Instagram's tight bit behind sometimes. Welcome to What the Frac Live, where every week we are your fractional executives. We bring you marketing tips, topics, trends. We break it down for you. And these on Thursdays, every Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, are some of our favorite conversations because we bring on a new fractional team member every week to talk about their specialty. And this week we have Ashlee Berghoff, who I have never actually had a full conversation with, but as soon as we messaged each other on LinkedIn, I knew we had to have you on here because you very much align with my passion of process and protocols. And I know that Tamara's sick of hearing that. But I guess
I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
But anyway, so Ashlee, do you want to give us a little background on you and how you got to this space?
Yes, it was a very winding road. Did not expect to end up here when I graduated from college with an English degree and no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't realize that making order out of chaos was a job I could get paid for. So it took a while to discover that and realize I loved it and was good at it. And so I started A Squared, my business, back in 2017, coming out of an MBA program. And I started out as an operations manager, kind of a souped up VA for my initial clients, and then have iterated over the years to where we are now, where I'm a fractional COO, and then also have an agency of COOs and ops managers to take over the entire operational engine of a business and kick visionary founders out of that space because they don't want to be there anyway, and let them enjoy being the visionary rainmaker of the beautiful business they're building. So
that's amazing.
That's the very short answer there.
You know, it's really funny because I always say I like to start these with like an unpopular opinion, and you just brought up like 4 of them, which is number one, founders do not have to be the ones running the company. I just think that like sometimes the founder, I have a lot of respect for founders who say like, I got into this because I'm a great salesperson or I'm a great marketer. I'm not going to be the CEO, right? Let's hire someone. Number 2 is fractionals, not just CMO. You can have a fractional COO, a fractional CFO. I've even heard of fractional CEOs, which that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we'll have to someday figure out if that's even working. But
it doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right. But anyway, but the fraction where we want to talk about today, the hot topic or the unpopular opinion I want to start with today is that I hear extremely often when we work with small businesses or especially mom and pops that have grown to multiple locations or are starting to get into that spot where they are like not corporate, but not, you know, small business. They're kind of in that middle space. And the first thing they say is, why do I need processes? It's just me, or it's just me and my team, and they take initiative. And I just, that is the complete, I just feel like every company, whether you're a solopreneur or you are a multi-million-dollar corporation, there are certain processes and process, like you like to say, process engines that need to come into the business. So how do you feel about that?
I agree 100%. And I think one of the things that is kind of a gap in the conversation and when we think about operations is we think about SOPs and like policy and procedure manuals, kind of the way corporate does process. And then we think about kind of winging it over here as like a lack of process. And really, if we think about process as how we do what we do, it's the execution of the vision. It's the flip side of strategy in every business. It shows up in every department of every business of every size. Every business has processes. The question isn't whether you have them, it's how intentional are they, how visible to you are they, and how easy is it for you to update them and adapt them for what you need, right? So you as a small business don't need a big binder full of policies and procedures, very true, right? But what systems and process looks like is different and still a valuable part of the business. And so, yeah, you know, it's like the plumbing in your house, right? You don't think about the system that is the plumbing system in your house until it breaks. The same is true in any business, right? If you're getting the outcomes you need, great, your systems are working. But if you're not, how do you pull those out, land them on the table, and make them better, right?
Yeah. And I think, Tamara, I know you are going through this right now, so it'll be interesting to hear. I think also it's the fact that like we all have systems, but like when you are overwhelmed and needing to hire, like that's where you realize, okay, shoot, I don't have a way to like help other people understand my systems or to train on them. And I know you're hiring right now, Tamara. So is that something you're finding?
Yeah, well, you know what I've really been looking at, because we're kind of redesigning our tech stack right now for marketing, and so that like that new system that we're putting in place for our team. What I've really dug into and found is different learning styles for people and how the systems have to really work for every learning, like every learning style. And I know that like the way I see things is very different from how some of my team members can, especially different experience levels, right? So trying to design the simplest system possible that is a solution for very complex problems is difficult, right? So I think that really has been something that I've pondered, that I've been reading about, that I've been trying to do, because I know that the system that I build for me is not necessarily the system that will work for my team. So how do I also, all of this, create the feedback loop as we're testing this to see where is it breaking, where is it not working for my team, so that I can optimize it there. And when do I need to realize if it's not, if it works for me but not my team, how do I change? So, and we're like right in the middle of like testing out different CRMs, different, so like that's where I've been also picking all my friends' brains and going, okay, well, I'm this style of learner. Well, what works for you? What works for you? What type of learner are you? So it's been, I would say, wildly educational and also incredibly time consuming. It's very hard to set up a good system.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's very human, right? I love what you're sharing about that in terms of the learning styles of the people interacting with these. I think something that operators like me can get stuck in is we love the system for its own sake. But at the end of the day, it's just enabling humans to do what they need to do and to reach the outcomes that they want, right? And so if it's not matching the culture of the team, the way people think, the way they process information, it's not going to serve them. And neurodivergence is more common among entrepreneurs than in the corporate space as well. A lot of folks who are neurodivergent are drawn to entrepreneurship, and so traditional systems are not going to work for them. So I'm the same. I'm really passionate about how do we set up a system that feels great to someone with ADHD? How do we set up a system that really works for someone who hates the details, right? Yeah. And one of the first systems we always do for folks is a visual process map that looks a lot more like a mind map than a traditional process map. For that reason, we can kind of drill down to the level of detail we need, or kind of pop up to a higher level. And then you can have people looking at just the pieces they need for whatever decisions they're needing to make or whatever piece they need to know about.
Yeah. Not overcomplicating.
Yes.
Yeah. I was gonna say like that. I find that a lot with project management or any sort of like, productivity management styles. Like a lot of times companies come to us and they want to implement something, or I say, hey, how are you guys working? And they say, well, we have a spreadsheet here and we have a spreadsheet there, and this person has it in their mind and this person has it in their mind. And I say, well, what about a project management software? And right away they're like, oh no, that's never worked for us. We've tried it before. And we had a consultant, we paid a lot of money. And what normally, when I start to dig into it, what I find is that the consultant came in and built out all their processes or built out all the things they thought were perfect without doing the deep dive, without doing the correct training, and then just blew up everything that was going on a day-to-day. And so what we try to do is like go in and, like you said, do like that map and see what's happening, and then kind of start like doing slow changes. We love ClickUp mainly because you can see it in all the different ways. Tamara knows I love ClickUp. I am not sponsored by ClickUp. We run our own business off of it. I should be, because literally you could see it in all different ways, right? Like, it's not like Jira where a lot of engineering minds like it, but like creatives don't, right? All of that.
Oh, the interface is awful. Yeah.
Oh, right. And so I guess my question, because we have a lot of business owners, a lot of fractionals, a lot of people who might be looking to figure this out, what is the first step if you obviously have processes, you have a business running, but you don't have them out on paper, you can't train anyone on them, you may want to make them more efficient. What's that first step?
Yeah. So the first thing we look at is what I call the performance engine, right? Usually for one of the three biggest, most complicated systems in a business, right? Your customer experience, your marketing engine, and if you have a team, how you project manage across the team. Sometimes that's kind of its own unit of thing, how you're passing the baton from one person to the next and how you communicate and all that. For most folks, it's their customer experience, right? So we just start by pulling all the things out of their head and get it down in a visual way that they can see. This does a couple of things. One, it validates how good their system already is, to the point of, they're like, I don't have one. It's just all in here. I don't even know. And then they realize how amazing their brain is when we pull out a 150-step process from their brain, right? So we get it down on paper. And then what we can do with that exact same map is I'll save that version and then I'll turn it into a role map version. We move all the puzzle pieces around to who owns what. And that can be a really great exercise, both for the current team and for, we need to hire a new person. What do we need them to own, right? What are the puzzle pieces they need to carry? It makes it a lot clearer to understand what this person needs to be owning within the system and gives them a path to driving the car, is what I call it, right? You're driving the engine because now it's a holistic engine. And just like a car compared to a bucket of car parts, a 16-year-old can drive it. Everyone can kind of look at it and know how to work it, right? You don't have to be an expert in the system to run the system at that point, right? Just like with a car. And so we always start with that, just the big map. And people are always a little amazed at like, oh, we could do that in an hour and a half. And this is solving a lot of my problems around my process. And then usually it also highlights the gaps, just going through that, like, oh, we've always wanted to do that, but we're not doing it. Or we have all these issues with scope creep down the line that we could solve by adding a step to onboarding up here. You can kind of see the steps and understand like, oh yeah, this would go after this and before this, and we'll just slot that right in there. And that will solve this problem down here. And that just makes all of those future conversations around how do I get this to run better a lot easier because you can see it. So that's always where we start.
I'm curious. Well, two things. One, Nicole, this just makes me think we need to do some sort of either episode or something on the different management platforms and how they have different learning styles. Because like talking about this has really got me excited, like thinking about that. Second, what is a question for you? Where are the areas where you see businesses needing to either address their system, change their system? Like, are there stages in a business's growth where like they should point, okay, we've reached this many customers, we need to look at our systems, or we reached this many employees, we need to look at our systems. Like where are those times?
That's a really great question. And I think it's very fluid. But one of the things I've found is, the core system of client delivery comes first for even the solopreneurs, right? You want to start building consistency into how you do what you do. Because most of us start really, really custom. Like, oh yeah, I can do that. Sure. I'll charge you this much. We'll do that. Oh, I can do that. And so you have to start kind of turning from custom to customizable, right? So you kind of go from being a private chef to having a menu, right? So you start bringing some consistency into how you deliver. And then when you start building a team around that, right? This is where, a fractional CMO starts bringing in a team of copywriters or web designers or whatever that looks like. That's where project management becomes the next thing to break. Because, a lot of people have big resistance to project management tools for good reason. And as part of project management, the big thing that starts getting complicated when you don't just have 5 clients you can kind of remember is knowing exactly where everyone is in the process, what you've promised to everyone by when, and what's the next step for each person, right? So that becomes the next major thing to look at. How do we do that? And then you start layering in marketing engine stuff, right? Where people want to do a podcast. I know your last episode was about that. From experience how much work goes into one of those. Huge system challenge, right? To run one of those efficiently. So then people will start saying, well, I want to start this new coaching program, or I want to launch a course, or I want to start this new marketing channel. And then that becomes its own engine that you can kind of build and understand as you're creating it, right? But I think for a lot of people, it's kind of starting to put some systemization around how you do what you do, then thinking about how you project manage your client through that process, especially when you have more people involved in it. And then you start adding additional systems on top of that as things get more complicated. And you might have someone whose only job it is to run your podcast or whatever that looks like, right?
What is your favorite system or platform for smaller companies? Come on, tell us. Like, I'm in research mode. What do you use?
So for our clients, we are agnostic if they have something that works for them. For this exact reason, we have people who are in Basecamp, adore Basecamp. We have people who are in Asana and hate Asana. So we talk to them about something else, whatever that looks like. We personally use Notion. And part of the reason I use Notion is because I do time budgeting. One of the things that I think is a major gap with every single project management software right now is that it's all about doing more and tracking everything and doing things more efficiently. But there's no real support in prioritizing or focusing, doing less, right? So what I do is time budgeting, where I have to align the work I set out to do with the amount of time I have available. And it will tell me when I'm getting into la la land mode in terms of how optimistic I am about what I can do in a certain frame of time. And the other tools can't give me that. And so I could build it okay in Notion. It's still a lot of workarounds to make it work the way I want, but that's where we are right now for all of our internal database and project management as a team.
Love it. How do you feel? I think I know the answer to this only because of the way that you've been explaining how you go about processes with clients, but how do you feel about where automation comes into this process?
This is an unpopular opinion that several of my clients do not enjoy. But I see automation as pretty far down the line as far as building operational engines goes. I've run into clients who spent hours and hours and hours and hours automating something that saves them 15 minutes a week for 6 months. And then they change their process and it's no longer relevant, or something breaks and they spend more time fixing it than they would have spent just doing the thing, right? For a company like Microsoft, if they save 15 minutes per role and they have 150 people doing that role, the maths. Right? When you're a smaller company, it's harder to make the investment for setting up automation as useful as promised, right? Not that it doesn't matter, not that it can't come into play in useful ways, but I think a lot of times what people have is a volume problem, right? Just genuinely too much volume that can't be fixed by automation, or they have a workflow problem, and automation can't help a workflow problem either. So we have the 5 phases of building a scalable business that we walk our clients through, and automation is in phase 5. None of our clients are in phase 5 right now.
I was really excited to maybe battle you on this, but you answered exactly the way that I was expecting, right? That's what I say too, because so often people want to jump into the automation part of it because they think, especially with what's out online right now and talking about how like if you're not automating and you don't have a team of 1 doing $2 million, it's just unrealistic, right? Like I come from software where like you want to put it out there and hear from your customers before you like go and build the whole product, right? And it's the same thing here, right? So often we think what's going to be the ideal process, and then we go and automate it, and then we realize, oh shoot, we missed 5 spots, or I worked with, like I was just working with a client and I went through their whole process of like putting out their products, like building them, manufacturing, shipping, all the way out, and then realize that, oh, okay, there's a lot of customization in here. So these 5 things we just automated, like now we need to kind of make them less automated. So you just do a lot more work. So I can't battle you on that, unfortunately.
I'm sorry to destroy the debate by agreeing with you. But yeah, I mean, I think, AI is big on the scene. It will change, it's already changing the way people think about operations and implementation and those sorts of things. And that matters, and it will become more and more relevant. But I think one of the gifts of a really small business is the ability to be nimble, and automations just, they don't play well with nimble, right? Because you change something and then they break.
See, I'm on the fence with you guys. So I probably have the alternative point of view, but
Sure.
it really does depend on the situation, right? Like I am literally in the process of automating like everything. But that's because it's an automation that I know I can set up and it'll be done for 6 months. And that will save 10 hours a week for, 2 of my team members, right? So like,
yeah, that's significant.
then it makes sense. I think I agree with you on, you really have to map out how much time does it save and make it worth your while if you want to automate it. Because I'm a big believer in take a week off, look at your systems, reset your systems, optimize them, and then move forward. But don't be constantly optimizing your system.
But Tamara, is this a system that you're automating that is already a tried and true system? Or is this a new system that you're trying to implement and you're just going straight into automation?
New system, straight into automation.
Damn. Brave woman.
So this conversation, we'll circle back. We'll do our follow-up in 3 months, and we'll see if I'm rebuilding. But I think, I think, and I also think I'm really trying to figure out, and this is just like being totally honest, I'm really trying to figure out how AI fits into some of the systems, right? And I'm spending the time right now trying to look at it, even though I know that it's going to change radically every month. But I do feel like why wait until, a year from now when people are like, oh, it really is working, or really like, I do feel like this is happening so rapidly that if you aren't kind of dabbling in it, that you could be missing some really helpful things. So I am spending, a few hours a week looking at AI systems. Not saying
I think that's,
but looking at them.
But learning,
battle. Sorry, Ashlee, I want to hear your point of view on this for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the early stages of learning as well. I mean, I believe it's here to stay. I believe it will be changing the game in a lot of things. And I think those of us in the fractional space, it seems to be a double-edged sword so far, right? On one hand, the churn's going to hit us first. On the flip side, we're better able to learn how to adapt and evolve to a new way of working and a new way of how work gets done, right? And how some of these things happen, which is both scary and kind of exciting to say, okay, we're already in the practice of thinking about how do we adapt what we're offering to give us the best value possible, and all of those things. Like we're already thinking that way. So my challenge is I'm just not naturally an early adopter. I know like Clubhouse was a big thing a couple of years ago, and everyone's like, you must be in Clubhouse if you want to be a marketer, blah, blah, blah. I never even created an account. I was like, I'll wait and see. And that was the right call, right? So I'm always the person who's like, work out the bugs and come back to me. We will discuss. But AI, I need to start learning it. It's very, relevant to what I do. So
I'm amazed by Clubhouse. I've met people who have raised for their company dollars on Clubhouse, which is astounding to me. But yes, I agree with you. I agree with you on all those points.
I think for me though, it's like, I agree with everything you guys are saying. And even Tamara, I agree with you. Like this is here to stay. It's going to change the way people work, right? Like it's going to be a part of our society and our jobs moving forward. Whatever that looks like in 5 years is a whole nother story. But I also disagree with the fact that like, as being someone who was a founder, as being someone who was a small business owner, as being someone who's a fractional in bigger companies and has seen business at all spaces, I think that if you're on social media, you hear things like, if you're not using AI, you're not going to be a successful business owner, right? It's very black and white, big statements. Yeah. And I think that if you are already stressed with the amount of work you have, or you are already growing too fast for, the amount of time you don't have enough time in the day, and you're a small business owner and you're not using AI, I don't think you're going to I'm not going to be the one who comes in and says you have to use it, right? I think that is based on what you're most comfortable with. If you want to start incorporating AI, maybe bringing in some sort of fractional or expert to help you think through how that can fit in. I think looking at having your process down on I do flow charts. Tamara knows she's seen my flow charts. I'm a lucid chart expert, love flow charts. Yep. But looking at your funnel, looking at your flow chart, looking at your mind map, and seeing which spots are missing things or which spots can be more efficient. And then going back and saying, is AI part of that? Is a new employee part of that? Is automation part of that? Is a VA part of that? Whatever. Now saying, okay, which one is it? And being customized to it instead of saying AI is the end all be all. That's how I feel about it. And if you are not using AI because you don't have the time, you don't need it, don't feel bad. That's my feeling on it personally.
Oh
yeah. I agree.
100%. Because I do feel like there's, go ahead, Nicole.
No, go for it. I want to hear what you feel.
Oh yeah. I was just going to say, because I do feel like there's still so much vulnerability in AI that still has to be caught by humans. So you don't want to put a system in place that's so reliant in AI. But on the other hand, there are some things that are happening that are great for AI. I told Nicole this yesterday when we were chatting, because I'm in the midst of also CRM hunting, right? I think I just need to download on all the systems that are out there and be all right, let me look at each one and what their qualities are. But one thing that I've been trying to figure out is how AI can optimize that. And genuinely in things like, can it find the LinkedIn information and that sort of thing that takes a few minutes, right? But if you're doing it on scale, that's super helpful. And so there are these things that AI is good at in the system, depending on what industry you're doing or what your focus is and what takes time, that I think could be very beneficial. Now, what apps are doing that well, which aren't, that's where I am now trying to look at and see, okay, is it worth putting into my workflow?
Yeah. Then the hard thing about any software tool is they will never tell you what they don't do well, and they will never tell you where their gaps are, right? They wait for you to find them after you spent hours setting them up. It's great fun. But yeah, I think, to what we've been talking about, when you start with the big picture engine first, it makes it easier to identify what you need it to do for you, right? I had a conversation with someone once about her CRM, and she was like, yeah, I've been spending some time really looking into this one. And as I was talking to her, we realized she hated being on her phone. That's not how she wanted to use it. She wasn't going to a lot of events. A phone-based tool was not going to be her thing. And this was a app, 100% an app-based CRM. I was like, well, you can check that off the list immediately, right? But we had to kind of step back first and think about, who's going into the CRM? Are you pulling people in for cold outreach? Are you doing a lot of LinkedIn outreach? Are you meeting people at events? What do you need it to do for you? And then at least it helps narrow the field a little bit, but it's still hard because these tools they'll say they can do a lot of things that they don't do well, and that makes it difficult.
Yeah. Which is where I think having a fractional is really important, right? So, a lot of us have, like you said, for your customers, you're software agnostic. I've been in every software there is, every project management software there is, because I've worked with clients. I've owned an agency and I know what, and so being in there, you could learn a lot more about how good it is or how bad it is, or what its strong points are. I could say right now, okay, if you're a company coming in who has a lot of engineers on your team, maybe Jira is the right way to go, right? If you have a sales team, maybe Salesforce, right? Because it's the way that it's set up and who's working in it. But if you have a team of creatives, we're not going to put you on Jira. We're not going to put you on even Basecamp, right? And if you have a team of creatives, maybe Asana is great because you know what? When you check off a task, some confetti comes up, right? That. Yeah. It sounds silly, but it's so true. That's the thing. And I think this goes back to also VAs, right? I think that a lot of people look at their process and they say, okay, I can hire a VA to take over all of these pieces without fully understanding what is actually going into those pieces or that part of the process, because they can't afford, let's say, from the marketing side, they can't afford a CMO level person. And this is where I think fractional's new to the game, but in 5 years, you're going to see it being worked this way, where a fractional's coming in for the monthly and yearly strategy pieces and like the training pieces and the setup. And then they're hiring executional level marketers at a much cheaper rate to do the actual work and get it out there. And there's just, my big catchphrase right now is like, not all marketers are created equal, but they're all important in that phase. Where do you feel VAs kind of come into that place?
Yeah, I really appreciate that you said that, because it's very validating for me as someone who set up my agency in exactly that way on the operations side. So we have COOs on our team because most people just need a dash of that, right? They need someone to come in, pull the systems together, think about big picture, where are we going? How are we driving the vision operationally? But most of all, they need someone on the ground in the trenches driving project management for them, right? And so that's how we split it. But I think in the entrepreneurial space, one of my biggest pet peeves is that the phrase virtual assistant has been used to cover what in corporate is about 50 different roles, right? So it's become essentially meaningless at this point in terms of what skill set does this person have? What level of ability are they at? Are they able to be client facing or not? All sorts of different things are just kind of bucketed under this huge term. But I traditionally think of virtual assistants as what you would see in corporate as an administrative assistant, usually more of a junior administrative hire. And a lot of people think that's the first hire, right? Because they're less expensive. They can take admin stuff off of your plate. But I've run into so many people who have tried that and it didn't work. And usually the big reasons are they don't have time to manage someone, and they don't know what to give them to do. And they don't have a lot of well-defined recurring processes in their businesses, right? So if you have those things, a virtual assistant can be great. But a lot of folks, what they need is someone to come in and kind of manage them. This is what you need to be doing. Don't forget that you have that deadline on Friday. Hey, I'm going to reach out to this client about this thing. This client is at this place. This is what you need to do next. They're driving project management for the team, right? And so what I tell people a lot is, if you can't have a big budget at the beginning, which most people don't for good reason, it's better to have fewer hours of someone at the level that you need than more hours of a junior hire, right? A virtual assistant usually isn't the right first hire because you don't have the operational infrastructure for that, right? And a lot of the people I run into who've tried it and it didn't work blame themselves, right? Which is just a big bummer because it's not really their fault. The whole system is kind of failing them in that way and failing the VAs, right? Because there's not clear definition around what you need and when and how you can get the kind of support that actually is going to help you,
That's so beautifully put. I don't even have a rebuttal because that's so beautifully put. I think that we all know it's like one of those things we know that's like not mind blowing, but also at the same time, we don't want to admit to ourselves, right?
Yeah. It's tough, it's hard to be a good VA too. I think I'll see it on these listicles of like ways to make money part-time from home. They're like, sell some stuff in your garage and also become a VA, right? It's not an easy job to do well. And that kind of devalues what it takes to show up in an operational capacity in a really nimble, visionary business with a founder who usually doesn't love the systems, needs someone to come in and kind of wrangle things for them, right? And so then they hire a VA who comes and says, I'm here, how can I help you? And they stare at them blankly because they don't know the answer to that question. Yeah. Like, I hope you can help me figure out how you can help me. Can you do that? Right? And the VA can't usually.
Yeah. And I've heard it the opposite too, where I've heard people say like, I started this company. I'm into all these things that I don't really know too much about. So I hire someone who's at the top of their game to do this thing. And I expected them to put the processes in place. And now I'm realizing that we're missing things or balls are getting dropped because they're not doing all the things that they should have put in place. Right. And I think that that's also setting people up for fail, even not on the VA level, even on a higher level, because most people are coming in to do their job and to do it the way that you want it or need it to be done in your company. And just because they came from another company, they may know some of the stuff, but they may not understand all of it that takes to kind of build a full department. And that's where another fractional like level thing can come in.
Right. Yeah. Someone who's done it in an entrepreneurial context or is willing to kind of roll up their sleeves a little. The client I'm a fractional COO with now, we started with a couple of systems where I took it over in its current messy state and had to actually run the thing while I was building the plane. And it was great. I built a lot better system because of that, because I was running into every single pothole personally, right? And so I was understanding like, okay, here's what we need to fix. Here's how we can get this to actually work because I'm doing it. I'm proving the system. And then I can hand it off to someone on the team to own once it's built. And that worked really well. But it was an interesting experience for me because it's like, I don't know how do I get in touch with State Farm? What am I doing? You know, it was a new system to me. But we figured it out and we were able to smooth out all of the holes I fell into along the way.
Yeah. That's the best way, I think, sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, just let me do it so I can understand it. Tamara, I know you've done that in the past as well. Your fractional style. I came from agency style. You kind of jump in and actually like become an executive. I know that all fractionals, that's the definition of a fractional, but like you like literally like sit in the office with them, and it's a little bit more hands-on. Do you feel the same way on these pieces?
Yeah, and I think it is really different when it comes to different stages of a company's life, right? I've been in like straight up startup where it's like concept to launch, right? And that's a sweet spot that I've been in a lot because I really love that phase. I have a lot of fun. And then the other phase that I get in a lot is during like that scale, right? Okay, we've hit our stride and now we're scaling, which is the bumpier time, right? It's like, oh my goodness, we obviously had such good systems in place that we made it to here, but to scale, systems do have to change, right? That's just part of life. So then that's the other time where it's, you come in and you look and you go, either things are working really well and you optimize, or you go, okay, in order to scale, you've got to change some things. And then goodness, it can get real bumpy. But at the end of the day, no matter what, you're going to find a better solution. So that's my long-winded way of saying that. But it's funny because as we've been talking, I am slightly distracted because I keep thinking about this. Nicole, we've talked about fractional so much, and now we're talking about kind of like the people who execute and, VAs who are coming into the system. And one thing that I'm pondering, and I've been pondering recently, is how do we raise now if we are really going towards fractional executives? How do we then raise and mentor these really strong upcoming, talent if we are highly remote and highly fractional? I think that's going to be something that we're going to need to like really focus on in the future as leaders, and then, bringing up the next group of leaders, because they may not have the same experiences that we did that makes us now exceptional, like make us now like, all right, we're good. We can be fractional.
Yeah. That it's going to be an interesting push in that direction. But I think it's going in that direction, right? Like businesses can't afford, a team of 15 marketers, right? So, how do we, and also there's this gap between the big corporations, the startups, and the small businesses. And I think that like, if the small businesses and startups are going to compete with the corporations who have all this money and team and power, they have to become more creative, right? So yes, technically we're going to see a lot more people who are remote, who are maybe don't have the same experience that's making us really great, but in the future that experience that makes us really great may not be what they need later on. So I guess it's going to be interesting. I think that's a wait and see question, Tamara. I think what I'm more concerned with, Ashlee, is hearing how you deal with, two things. One, I have found that just because a process isn't broken doesn't mean it doesn't need to be changed. And then once we go to change that process, because maybe we're making it more efficient, maybe we realize the future it's going to need to change. So let's get proactive here. I'm big a proponent of being proactive in your business. But then you have a team member or multiple team members. We know people don't love change, who realize they're very like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like, how do you deal with those pieces?
Yeah, it's really tough. And I think in an entrepreneurial environment, change is so common that even if you have folks who are like, yeah, I like the energy of this environment, get tired of all of the change. Right. And I think, as leaders, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And one of the things that comes more easily to me is just really, really, really listening to what they're experiencing, what's going on the ground, and trying to rein myself in too on where are we changing to make this really gorgeous or optimal when it's adding a lot of friction in their lives, right? I was actually talking to someone today about kind of that 80-20 rule, right? What is that 80% that we can get to with a lot less effort? We're not putting the team through it to get to 100, right? So yeah, I was part of a process where we did a full reorganization across a team of people who had been entrenched for 20 years in an industry that doesn't change much, right? And it was a long, slow process of sitting down with them, talking to them, helping them understand why we're doing it that way, what it means for them, involving them in the process of how that looked, and then kind of testing it out on the other side and continuing to check in with them. And I think because we took it really intentionally, they were more open to it. And I think they had kind of come in with this attitude of, yeah, we tried that before. And you keep telling us you're going to change stuff and then nothing ever changes and nothing ever gets better. And we're like, this time it's real. This time it's going to happen, And so we had to follow through on that. And I think they came to the other side and we're like, okay, yeah, actually this makes a lot more sense. This feels good. Because, especially because it was such a foundational overhaul in how the company ran, they, had questions about their jobs, right? Do I still have a job here? Like, what does this look like? And, I appreciated their willingness to ride that roller coaster with us.
Yeah. I've seen where mergers and acquisitions have gotten that place where like, if they don't want to like change things or like put too much out there until they have it all set, the executives have it all set, but then that uncertainty causes people to feel really unsure and really, start looking for other jobs or start figuring, my job's not safe if they're not telling me things. And so I think that listening part is really important. And what I also love about this is that I find like, first off, you're in your discovery, you should be trying to figure out like what type of people they are. And if I find that someone's a little resistant, what I'll generally try to do is like, what's a small thing we can do to show that it works and that we're going to finish it and that's going to make their life better and like build trust, right? We talk about building trust in marketing all the time, but with teams, it's the same thing. You have to build that trust. And then once they have that trust, now we make a bigger change and then a bigger change. And sometimes we have to phase this out instead of just going all in on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they have a chance to see like, oh, that did move us in a better direction. Okay. And that makes that bigger change feel more exciting.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we can talk about process and change, and we'll probably have to have you back on to talk about very specific processes. But as I wrap this up, I kind of have a question that I've been asking every guest on here, which is if someone is going into, let's say I'm a business owner or a founder, and I'm looking for a fractional, or I'm looking for someone to come in and help me figure out my processes. What is one red flag in our industry that they have to look out for when they're interviewing a fractional or a consultant in this space?
That's a really, really excellent question. And I think a red flag is not lack of industry expertise. I think people sometimes worry about that. Like, well, you've never done processes for a radio data company before, so you're not going to, it doesn't work that way. I think that becomes a big concern for folks. But one thing I would say to really pay attention to is the kinds of questions they ask and to what extent they lead the process from the very beginning with you, right? The promise that we make for our clients is that all they have to do is answer our questions, right? They don't have to figure out how to use us. They don't have to figure out where to point us. They don't have to figure out how to maximize what we're giving them. If they're having to do that processing, then we've let them down in some way. And so if they're asking really good, tangible questions about what's actually going on the ground, and deeper, kind of more foundational questions about what this business is even here for, why are we doing this? That can be a really good sign versus if they're kind of touting a lot of accolades and certifications, but not asking really good questions and already starting to say, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do, and here's how I'm going to lead you through it.
I love that.
I absolutely love that. Well, Ashlee, I know this is our first conversation, and I am so excited for more conversations because I feel like you've been reading my diary. Everything you're saying, I completely agree with. And I can't debate you on any of it. So if people now are looking at this and they said, we want to work with Ashlee, where can they find you?
I am so grateful to both of you, Nicole and Tamara, for this opportunity, especially taking a chance on me, meeting me for the first time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm the only Ashlee Berghoff with my funky spellings in the world right now. So on LinkedIn, you can find me under Ashlee Berghoff. And then my website is asquaredonline.com. I have a couple of free resources there I'm really excited about. One is kind of the actual playbook for how we do what we do for our clients. We kind of pull back the curtain on what that looks like. And then another is kind of my journey in 5 mistakes for how I extracted myself from the direct client delivery of my agency. A lot of our clients, that's a dream, and they do not know how in the world they go about extracting themselves from an expertise business that's kind of based on their brain, right? So I have both of those things there as free resources if people would like to learn more, read more, check things out.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to link those because I may download them. Those both sound very valuable.
I hope you enjoy them, and I would love to hear your feedback on them because, as people who are putting things out in the world, one of the biggest gifts that people can give is feedback on our work. So I'd love to hear what lands for you. So.
Agreed. Well, just like Ashlee just said, we are putting this out into the world. Remember to go subscribe. We have new episodes, new lives every week. We are here on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. If you really want to come find us on TikTok, we are there too. You can find us at whatthefractshow.com. And we would love for you to join our community on our newsletter and in our comments, giving us suggestions on case studies and troubleshooting that we can help you with. But until then, happy marketing. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Mommy.